Many of us have a very difficult time setting boundaries, and that's perhaps because we don't know what our boundaries are. We don't know where to begin with them. So let's dissect what a boundary really is. First, let's imagine that we've built a house. Now we want to protect the house, and we're probably going to think of building a picket fence. Every picket is going to create that fence, which is going to protect that house. Our boundaries would be that fence, and our values, the house. So we've got to first decide on what our values are. And I believe that our values are very much linked to the things in our past that made us feel safe and secure. And I'm going to share a few just for context. Your values may be similar or very different, but you've got to know your values. What were the things in your childhood that made you feel happy and safe and protected? One of my values would be peace. And perhaps it is because as a child I enjoyed going to spiritual spaces or being under a tree by myself and lost in my thoughts. And now that I'm older, anything that disrupts that peace makes me feel uncomfortable. And now that I know that that feeling is uncomfortable, I try to resolve it within myself, not the people around me, because they do not have the responsibility to make sure that I'm happy. This is something that happens within me. Now that brings me to another value of mine. I value emotional, psychological, spiritual growth. I value overall health. Some people will value achievements and accolades, something that they can hold, a trophy or a certificate, more than they would value emotional, spiritual, psychological growth, or maybe equally. The reason that that is not as important to me, not that it isn't, it's not the top priority above my psychological, spiritual, or emotional growth, is because at a very early age, I learned that winning that race at school, scoring best in my tests at school, it did give me the attention and the affection and validation that I wanted, but it was very short-lived. I had to go on to the next one, and so I kept chasing these achievements only to get a morsel of affection. Recognizing that I had to learn how to love myself, give myself the accolade, give myself the achievement. Only then I realized that the happiness that I was searching for was within me, and that's where the spiritual growth kicked in and the emotional growth. I wanted to be happy within myself and not look outside for that attention. Trust. Trust is incredibly important to me. The reason that trust is very important to me is because that I've learned over the years that when you feel betrayed, it's an incredibly painful experience. And because I've experienced it so many times, I didn't want to pass it on to others. And so I have learned how to be as truthful as I possibly can. First to myself, first in honoring myself, and the people around me will benefit from that. And it's not all a selfless act. When we don't like feeling like we've disappointed someone else, when we don't like feeling like an ingenuine person, then we don't want to carry that feeling. And so we must look within ourselves and change certain patterns, certain behaviors. These values, when they are not respected, we are going to feel incredibly uncomfortable. But a mistake that we tend to make is we look at others and we say, you're not respecting my boundaries. You're not showing me respect. When it's really not their responsibility. It is up to us to respect those boundaries. When we've learned how to respect our boundaries, after knowing what our values are, after knowing what we need to protect, then we don't really have to speak. We don't have to say, these are my boundaries. Let's say we're out somewhere and you're in a relationship. Someone comes over to you. Well, first of all, most times people will sense if you're someone they can approach or not based on body language. 70% of what we say is not through words. 70% of what we say is entirely in our body language. And so many people will sense when they can approach you or not. Now let's just say they don't get it and they come across to you. They offer to buy you a drink. If you're in a relationship and if you respect you first, you can easily say, no, thank you. Now, if they don't get that, because some people don't, and they push, then you have two choices. You can say it again, or you can remove yourself from the situation. So in relationships, when you feel like you've been disrespected, instead of jumping to, oh, well, you should have known better, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we come from our own trauma. So we can speak up once or twice. But if we've got to keep saying over and over that this is a boundary of mine, these are my boundaries, then we've got to ask ourselves, who's not respecting us? Is it that person? That person is not listening? Or am I not respecting myself to say, okay, this is enough? It's a tricky thing when it comes to setting boundaries, because most of us did not grow up being taught how to respect our boundaries. We were told that we had to neglect ourselves, not directly, indirectly. Neglect yourself so that someone else will be happy. Give up your toy so that someone else can be happy. You're having a candy, somebody might have said, oh, you need to share, without asking us, how do we feel about this? Allowing us to make a decision for ourselves. Now, the healing journey, learning about what our attachment styles are, what triggers us, how our people-pleasing tendencies act its role in how we set boundaries. That's a process that we need to be incredibly gentle with ourselves with. So we first want to sit and take our time with this one. First, decide on what your values are. What are things about you that it's just you? Integrity, spirituality, family, education. What is it about you that makes you feel safe? And how can you protect these things about you? So, for example, if you value peace, it means that you already know that what you feed your mind will disrupt your emotions. It'll either make you happy, it'll make you sad, it'll make you upset, angry. So you learn exactly what to allow into your mind. It's going to be television, what you read, the people you're around. Now, if you value peace, and you're in a circle or you're with a person who's always angry, always negative, always critical, then that's going to disrupt your peace. And if it's a close friend of yours or a partner, how are you going to address this, right? You can empathize with a person because we know that who this person is because of their trauma. It's got nothing to do with you. And now how we show up and how we communicate what we need in this relationship, keeping in mind that we need to protect the things that we value is really, really crucial. We want to be respectful of where they're coming from, because when we're setting boundaries, it doesn't mean that we have to have exact values with the other person. We can respect that their values are different, but we can also meet in that middle ground. So we can say to that person that, look, I really, really value my peace, and I would love to support you if that's something that you'd like. However, the anger, the criticisms, the frustration, it does affect me. Perhaps we can find a way to resolve this so we can both feel better. There is a way of communicating how someone else's perhaps lack of boundaries, perhaps lack of respect for their own values might be affecting us, because again, the bottom line is that no one ever goes out there seeking discomfort. We're always looking for happiness. We're always looking for peace. If a person is unhappy and their emotions are affecting us, then their emotions are born from their trauma and probably just spiraled out of control, and this is just who they are. Now, if you want to be with this person, you've got to accept that this is who they are, and then make a decision in how you're going to move forward in the relationship while still protecting your boundaries, your space, your values. Let me know what your thoughts are. Subscribe to this channel for more, and I would welcome questions that you'd like for me to answer here. Please feel free to leave your comments, as I've asked, and share this if you found it helpful.